You either love David Lynch or you don't. You either love surrealism or you don't. Um, if you do, the most David Lynch thing that maybe has ever existed is Twin Peaks The Return, or Twin Peaks A Limited Event Series. I love Twin Peaks. I discovered Twin Peaks on Netflix. I was too young to watch it in its first run, but it was a phenomenon that you couldn't escape. I was, who killed Laura Palmer? And I thought, I don't know, I'm 10. But I knew that that was such a big deal. And when I saw it on Netflix, I actually think I saw the prequel movie first, Fire Walk with Me. I think I did see that as a teenager, because I was getting into David Lynch at the time. And Lost Highway had just come out, and I think I was sort of obsessively watching anything I could get my hands on that was David Lynch. But Twin Peaks sort of flew under the radar. The Return, the limited series that aired on Showtime about a year and a half, 2 years ago. It's very strange show, in very frustrating ways and also very wonderful ways. David Lynch really subverts this idea of the nostalgia revival of shows. You've got your Fuller House, you've got your Gilmore Girls, and all these shows that are being brought back one day at a time or whatever. And David Lynch is like, okay, you want Twin Peaks back? You want Twin Peaks back? Okay, great. I'm going to do Twin Peaks the way I want to do Twin Peaks, not the way you want me to do Twin Peaks. And it's amazing in a lot of ways. I mean, it is almost entirely, in its 18-episode run, a visual show. There's dialogue in it, but you're being told the story mainly through visuals, and you're not given the answers to a lot of the questions that you had regarding the earlier show. Or you are, and those answers are so David Lynch that only David Lynch would know what they meant. But, I've heard stories about people who come up to him and they'll say, this thing that happened in Blue Velvet, or this thing that happened in Mulholland Drive, or this thing that happened in Twin Peaks, it meant this, right? And no matter what they say, David Lynch will go, yes, that's right. Because he wants it to be up to you. He wants it to be up to the audience. He doesn't want to give you the answers. He wants you to think a little bit. Obviously, I can't talk about every single episode in the entire series, but I do want to focus in on a couple. Specifically, the one that I want to talk about the most is episode 8. There's about, this is like each episode is about an hour long. There's about 15 minutes in the beginning of story, like kind of basic traditional story. And then things just go off the rails. Suddenly we go back in time, and there's a nuclear bomb being tested, and it goes off, and the camera is way like a mile away from this mushroom cloud, but it very, 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 very slowly zooms into the mushroom cloud, and everything goes to static and noise and colors, and we suddenly are outside of this gas station where at super speed these ghostly figures are walking around, and then there's like this slug monster, and there's all these things. And what is happening is you're being told the entire backstory of Twin Peaks through these visuals entirely, and no dialogue. And you have to figure it out. These very surreal, very strange images that you're being shown, and you have to piece together what it means. And obviously, I think I went into the show, and most people went into the show going, ooh, we're going to get all these answers from like questions we had about like season 1 and 2 of Twin Peaks. It's going to be amazing. And David Lynch just goes, nope. And he gives you something in some ways even better. My ex-girlfriend and I were watching that episode 8 together, and she sat there and just hated it. What is going on? What the hell's going on? What is this? I'm bored, blah, blah, blah. And I sat there and I'm frustrated, but I remember saying, I kind of love this. It was beautiful from a visual standpoint, but that David Lynch gives his audience so much credit that he says, I trust you guys to figure this out in any way you want to, however you want to. That's impressive for any filmmaker to trust his audience that much, to not want to give you what you want. And you don't get much of what you want. You see some of the characters from the old show, and they're sort of like either the same people that they always were, and you don't get to see the progression of them, or they're like utterly different, and you don't get to see the progression of how they got to that new point. Or in the case of Kyle MacLachlan, you get, everybody's favorite agent, Dale Cooper. You get the villainous Dale Cooper, who, that actually does answer a question from the very last episode of season 2 of Twin Peaks. You've got regular Agent Cooper, who doesn't appear until really the second to last episode. And then you've got Dougie, the sort of mentally challenged Dale Cooper, living a fake life with a fake family and sort of wandering around in a very Peter Sellers and Being There kind of way. Kind of people think he's amazing and deep and he's cracking these mysteries and everything, and really he's just bumping into walls. And you want Agent Cooper back, and David Lynch goes, no, here's Dougie. We're giving you Dougie for 16 of the 18 shows. And then you get to the second to last episode, and suddenly it is everything you wanted. It was everything you expected. Cooper's back. The final showdown with Bob. All this stuff. All the things sort of answered that you want. And it ties up so perfectly that you realize it's David Lynch trolling you. Because there's still one episode left. And I don't want to spoil what happens in that final episode. But it rewrites everything that you knew about Twin Peaks. The entire story, the main story. It rewrites it. It undoes it. It reinvents it. It is daring and bold in every sense of the way an artist can be daring and bold. And it leaves you with more questions than it does answers. And that's what David Lynch does. And if you don't like that, then you won't like this. Twin Peaks, a limited event series, is very difficult. I mean, if you were to sit down and marathon Twin Peaks, it would be very jarring to get to the third season. But if you stuck with it, it would also be very worthwhile. As a Twin Peaks fan, I give Twin Peaks, a limited event series, 4 out of 5 stars. I knock 1 star off because as much as I love him kind of trolling us and not giving us what we want, there is a part of me that would have really liked a few answers. And I have to admit that. But otherwise, this is a visually amazing show. You don't even have to be a Twin Peaks fan to watch it. I think if you just want to sit down and enjoy the ride, it works in that aspect. So 4 out of 5 stars for Twin Peaks: The Return. If you have Showtime, I think you could probably find reruns of it. Otherwise, seek it out on DVD and Blu-ray. It is like nothing else that you're going to see.